Hi, everyone. My name is Antoine Kunch. I am the Community Resilience Coordinator for the Resource Conservation District of the Santa Monica Mountains here in Los Angeles, California. I'm also a doctoral student at the UCLA Institute of the Environment and Sustainability, where I work on wildfire prevention and education. I'm very excited to welcome you to my session today, where I will be talking about a new platform that we created and published in September of 2020 called defensiblespace.org. Its main goal is to support homeowners and residents of Southern California to create a sustainable, defensible space in order to reduce the risk of ignition on their property while maintaining and protecting the native ecosystem we are surrounded by here in the beautiful area of Southern California. I will be going over the different sections of the website, focusing on the structure of the information and the creation process. And I will end by talking about the collaboration aspect, the 18-month collaboration that it took to create that website with all the agencies involved. I will mention some of the challenges we faced and how we managed to overcome them. But I'm going to be starting now and share my presentation. So, because I know this is an international conference, so I'm going to give you some background about what resource conservation districts are and what our mission is. So there are about 70 RCDs for short in the state of California. We are a special district for the state, and our mission is really to promote land stewardship and resource conservation. We have a team of biologists that offers restoration services and biological inventory. We also have a very strong team of educators working on environmental education programs throughout the region. And I personally work on community resilience and wildfire preparation. I included also a map of Southern California and all the beautiful national parks that we have in our region, in our state. I don't know if you visited, you should consider, but here down in Southern California, we had the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area just outside of Los Angeles. So the area itself is about 150,000 acres, and I want to acknowledge that we are on Chumash and Gabrielino Tongva sacred land. It's a pretty steep terrain that we have here. We have a lot of mountain slopes and canyons with elevation ranging from sea level to 3,000 feet. We have a very wide range, a very diverse range of ecosystems, including riparian habitats. You can see here on my slides a photo of the Malibu Creek, I believe. We have oak woodlands, we have valley oak savannas, coastal safe scrub, and chaparral. Finally, there are more than 50 threatened or endangered species, plant and animal species, here in the National Recreation Area, which is one of the highest concentration in the continental US. So here's a photo of the chaparral and of the Santa Monica Mountains. The California plant ecosystems are known for their resilience to periodic wildfire that are natural and necessary processes for long-term sustainability. However, it is a misconception to think of certain plant species as fire-adapted when their adaptation is specific to a particular temporal and spatial pattern of burning, what we call the fire regime. Fire-adapted traits of shrubland species like chaparral are going to be very different from those of forest ecosystems. The long-term impact of increased fire frequency on native vegetation of Southern California is particularly important when considering increased fuel management techniques and prescribed burning. Fire return intervals of less than 6 years have indeed been shown to be highly detrimental to the persistence of non-responding chaparral species. So for most of the 20th century, fire suppression management techniques have effectively excluded fires from Western US forests, contributing to unnatural fuel accumulation and increased tree density. This resulted in a shift from low-intensity surface fires to high-intensity crown fires, potentially leading to forest landscape being type converted to shrublands and non-native grasses. On the other hand, the increased population growth and urban expansion in the California chaparral shrubland have led to fire frequency that has exceeded the historic range of variability despite similar suppression programs. And as a result, native shrublands have been converted in numerous locations to non-native grasses and forbs. And the map you see on your screen right now shows 3 different fire regime classes based on historic fire return interval. And as you can see, only a very small portion of our area, the green areas on the map, are within the class 1, meaning they are burning about as often as they are supposed to. Altered fire frequency and intensity is progressively rendering the native vegetation less adapted to the local fire regime despite their fire adapted traits, and posing a real threat to the sustainability of this ecosystem, especially as we witness dramatic increase in burn areas almost every year here in California. So despite decades-long effort, really, to improve community safety and reduce wildfire losses at state and local levels, well, the Wildfire in 2018 burned almost 100,000 acres, destroyed or damaged almost 2,000 homes, and killed 3 people. According to the Wildfire After Action Report, the Woolsey structural losses were not caused because the fire behaved any differently than previous fires, but because previously identified problems were still present. And that includes inappropriate landscaping, vulnerable or inadequately maintained structures, failure to adequately scale, promote, and implement well-established principles for home hardening and sustainable defensible space. Most importantly, the characteristic of the Southern California fire regime are not well understood by local residents. And that's very true when you go on site and talk with people. Fire management practices suitable to high elevation inland forest are often conflated with those that would be helpful in our coastal region. And the two are extremely different. So this is what prompted the Woolsey Fire and its consequences, what prompted the Santa Monica Mountains Fire Safe Alliance, which is a task force made of local government and fire agencies, land management and conservation organizations, community organizations, and science collaborators to work at promoting the restoration and maintenance of fire-resilient landscapes as a top priority in their wildfire preparation and mitigation strategy. You can see the 3 main axes there. They supported the project that I'm presenting today, which is a guidance for sustainable defensible space and landscaping in the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area and Southern California. Before we continue, I want to give a quick acknowledgements of the funding sources for this program. The website that we are going to see was funded by CAL FIRE, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protections, with money from the California Climate Investment Program. So in September 2020, after 18 months of interagency collaboration, we published the website defensiblespace.org, and this is the homepage. We define sustainable defensible space as the first 100 feet around the home, and its goal is really to increase fire resistance of the structure, safeguard firefighters' lives, and improve conservation values to protect California's natural heritage. We have 6 main categories that I'm going to describe in the next few slides. Yep. So the first category is home hardening. The key messages here are really to start with the home using fire-resistant materials and prevent ember intrusion, because the fire regime that we have down here is very often a high wind-driven fires, and embers are a cause of ignition in many cases. The second category is about the landscape. And here we talk about the defensible space. We talk about the different zones, and you're going to see some diagrams that are going to show those different zones. The amber resistant zone, the first 5 feet around the home, the fire-wise landscape as you move outwards, and key recommendation for maintenance and spacing. Finally, we talk about the community, community planning, preparedness. We encourage people to create a wildfire action plan and sign up for emergency alerts. We have a section on locations. So this one is more of an interactive map where people can see different layers. They can look at their location, they can see the fire history in the area, they can look at the different type of habitats that surround the homes, and they can find emergency resources like fire departments and shelters. We have a section specifically dedicated to plants and native plants. We go over what is a fire-resistant plant and our approach there, that we prefer to talk about the condition and the maintenance of the plants rather than the fire-resistant label that very often plants are associated with in plant lists. We talk about the benefit of native plants and how to create a sustainable landscape. And finally, we have resources and frequently asked questions available. So I'm going to start with the home hardening and going to kind of like give you an overview of the section on the website, how it looks like and how we built it. And you can see here on the right side of the photo of a demonstration structure that we built a couple of years ago to showcase different home hardening strategies. So here's what you would see if you were to click on the home section of our website. You can see at the very top, we differentiate between new construction, retrofit or upgrade, and maintenance. Maintenance is a really key component, and we emphasize it throughout the website. We talk about each architectural feature of the home. We talk about the roof, the eaves, the gutters, the vents, that we really tackle everything that you can have on your structure so that you have an idea of how you should be building them if it is a new construction, or what you should be doing to improve their fire resistance in case it's an existing structure. This diagram that you see here is a very key diagram that we produced. It's the relative cost and priority level of home hardening features for fire resistance. So for example, here we are on the page dedicated to the roof for new construction. You can see the roof as a very high priority level, but it has also a very high cost. So if you are looking for recommendations for upgrading your current structure, the roof may not be an option for you depending on your budget. But if you look at that diagram, you can see that vents, especially because I mentioned embers and ember ignition, vents are extremely important and should be prioritized for wildfire prevention and home hardening, and they have a very low cost. So this really serves as a guide for people based on their budget. And finally, on the right side, we have the bulk of the information, the recommendations and the background information. Here, because we're talking about roof, we have a little section explaining what a Class A roof is and the type of materials that people should be looking for. Here in a section dedicated to the upgrades or retrofits, we built those as an easy to understand list using a lot of icons. We have a lot of icons throughout the website, and they've been very helpful to pass on the information and the most important recommendation. For example, here for the vents on the left side, we recommend people to install non-corrosive metal mesh screen with maximum opening of certain size to prevent ember intrusion. On the right side, we talk about the gutters, and you can see how they are highlighted on the diagrams. And we talk about maintenance and upgrades in that same list. Very often, we're going to mention maintenance actions first, because maintenance is the #1 way to really reduce the risk of wildfire and the risk of ignition. Now I'm going to talk about the landscape and the defensible space. So similarly to the home hardening, we differentiate between new and existing construction, and we have a tab about seasonal maintenance, where it's all about how to maintain your landscape in a fire-wise manner throughout the year in Southern California. We divide the content by zone, starting from the house. So we direct to the home hardening section. Zone 0, the first 5 feet of the amber resistant zone. Zone 1, Zone 2, and the surrounding wildland. We provide also a very important diagram here, and I will talk about the built-in messages in the next few slides. But this is a very key diagram that helps us pass on the information to people, which zone they are located in right now, what are the recommendations they're looking at, and what type of vegetation should be in that zone. And you can see a gradient, a change as you move outwards. And finally, we have a recommendation list here on the right side, again, with a lot of icons. So diagrams, designing to pass information, that was a key factor in our project. So here I'm going to show you the evolution of that diagram. You start with the home and the first 5 feet. You go outwards to 30 or 50 feet from the house, depending on the slope. Then this zone depends if it can be 100 feet or 200 feet, depending on the recommendation of the local fire departments. And then you are in the natural landscape, the natural ecosystem. And so I'm going to go backwards, and you can see the gradient in color, but also the gradient in vegetation. When you are in the 5 feet zone, there is no vegetation. When you are in the 30 to 50, you can see one tree, you can see some small grouping of shrubs. And as you move outwards, you see the density increase. You see more trees, you see larger grouping of shrubs, and even more when you are in what we call the surrounding wildlands. So it's really passing on through diagrams the notion of transition, of ecological transition. This diagram was more difficult. It's spacing recommendation based on the slope. And as you can see, spacing recommendation increase as the slope increases as well. When you are on a moderate slope or a steep slope, the distances are recommended to be larger than when you're on a mild slope. And here I'd kind of like more specific guidance about the spacing of the grouping of ground cover or grouping of shrubs, not to exceed 500 square feet for ground cover or 50 square feet for shrubs, and the 20 feet spacing or 40 feet spacing, depending on the slope. The issue here is that these separation distances are still under development, because large empty spaces, that, as you can see here, the 40 feet or the 30 or 20 feet on slope, that can lead to erosion and slope stability issue, as well as invasive grasses take over. So we definitely flag those in our website, that those are diagrams, but they are not perfect, and we are working on improving the recommendations. And this diagram is another diagram for the community where things can get a bit complex when you are in the interface and you have overlapping defensible space with your neighbors. So there's like kind of like a graphic representation of what it can look like, as well as a description of the different zones in from 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I want to talk about the collaboration, the collaboration aspect, sorry, because I see the clock is ticking. So I'm going to talk about the technical advisory committee that we had to help us create this website. And we had fire agencies. We had the Los Angeles and the Ventura County Fire Department. We had California State Park. We had the National State Park and the US Geological Survey. We had a group of nonprofits from the California Native Plant Society, 3 people, the Theodore Payne Foundations, community organization with the Fire Safe Council, and researchers from the University of California. So we kind of like tackled all those categories at the national, state, and local level. Everybody was represented, and that led to a lot of information being shared, a lot of point of views being shared as well. And finding a consensus was not always easy, but I'm going to give you some kind of like points that we went through and that helped us overcome the differences in point of views. So first, you need to determine the audience and the geographic area for your project. In our case, we wanted to talk to homeowners. So we were not focusing on fire professionals, not on researchers, kind of a little bit on landscape architects, but it's really the message worth for homeowners who not necessarily have a background in wildfire regimes or landscaping. We talked about the geographic area. Should it be limited to the Santa Monica Mountains or include all of Southern California? We decided to limit some information like the map, the interactive map, to the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. But some of the recommendation, especially about fire-wise landscaping and native ecosystems, can be applicable to all of Southern California. You need to agree on common definitions and vocabulary. Fire safe, fire resistant, fire-wise, what do those terms mean? What are the zones of the defensible space? How far each zone is going to go? All of that, you're going to have some challenges, and you need to find a consensus in the diagrams that you are going to produce. Native ecosystems and habitats, those are the vocabulary that we decided to use rather than fuel and clearance. So it's also about the type of vocabulary that you use. You're going to give a certain tone to your product, to your website or your brochure. And finally, determine the key messages. From the house out was our first one. You start with the structure and you move out to the landscape. Conditions over species, kind of like demystifying what people think a fire-resistant plant is. And finally, emphasizing maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. That is like throughout our website. So you can find more information of everything I talked about on defensiblespace.org. It's a very dense website. We have a lot of information, and I'm working on keeping it updated every day. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.